Hi everyone, we are going to talk about the pancreas, the two kinds of glands, and in the end we will talk about a mnemonic, some mnemonics to remember them. Alright, the pancreas has both the exocrine and endocrine gland, and there's a mnemonic for this. So there's a shortcut to just remember that. Whenever you think about the pancreas, you can think about the exocrine and the endocrine gland. So think about a pancake. So substitute the word pancreas into pancake. So it's similar sounding and it's really close. And a pancake has an inside layer and an outside layer. So the inside layer is going to be the endocrine gland, and the outside layer is going to be the exocrine gland. So whenever you think about the pancreas, think about pancakes, and pancakes has two layers, endocrine and exocrine. Now, we are going to talk about the components of of both the endocrine and the exocrine gland. Let's talk about the exocrine gland. So the exocrine gland has two cells, the acinar cell and the draining duct cells. The acinar cells has a digestive enzyme, and it also has sodium bicarbonate. Now there's a mnemonic to remember that the acinar cell has a digestive enzyme and sodium bicarbonate. So just substitute the word acinar, break it down into two words, ACI and NAR, N-A-R, and substitute the word ACI into acid. So it's similar sounding, acid. And substitute the word NAR, N-A-R, into WAR, W-A-R. So it's easy for us to remember acinar cell as acid war. And now think about what the acid is going to fight in the war. During the war, the acid is not going to fight amongst itself, right? So it's not going to fight with another acid. Rather, it's going to fight with the base. So since it's pretty much the opposite of the acid. So the acinar cells, so the acid is going to be the digestive enzyme, and the base is going to be the bicarbonate. So acinar cell, I'm just going to recap everything. Acinar, acid war, and acid is going to war against the base. The acid is going to be our digestive enzyme. The base is going to be the bicarbonate. And that is actually drained into the duct cell, draining duct cell, as the name implies. And that goes to the duodenum of the small intestine. All right. And note, the pH of the pancreas is 8, which is really important because the stomach acid has a pH of, the stomach acid is very acidic, and having a pH of 8 is going to neutralize the specific chyme that comes out of the stomach. And there's a mnemonic to remember that the exocrine gland has a pH of 8, or the whole pancreas has a pH of 8. For that, we already know that sodium bicarbonate increases the pH, but to specifically remember the number 8, so imagine the pancreas, imagine lining two pancakes next to each other. Pancreas sounds close to pancakes, and just imagine two pancakes. When the pancakes are next to each other, it looks like an 8. Therefore, the pH of the pancreas is 8. And this pH is important to neutralize the acid so that the duodenum of the small intestine so it's not broken down. Now, let's talk about the endocrine gland. Endocrine gland is going to be the one that is inside the pancreas, and the endocrine gland is going to have three important cells: alpha, beta, and delta cell. The alpha cell is going to secrete glucagon, and the beta cell is going to secrete insulin, and they inhibit each other. For instance, when the beta cell secretes insulin, it's going to inhibit the alpha cell from secreting glucagon. Likewise, when the alpha cell secretes glucagon, it's going to inhibit the beta cell from secreting insulin. And the delta cell, which is another part of the pancreas, is going to secrete somatostatin. And the function of the somatostatin is that it inhibits both the alpha and the beta cells. Let me ask you an important question. When there is an increased blood glucose level, is the insulin secreted or is the glucagon secreted? In response to the increased blood glucose, beta cell senses the glucose and it secretes insulin. And insulin inhibits the alpha cell, so glucagon is not secreted. And because of this, since insulin is secreted in response to high blood glucose, the blood glucose eventually decreases because of insulin. And alpha cell is activated when there's low blood glucose level. When there's low blood glucose level, glucagon is secreted, and glucagon increases the blood glucose level. Let's focus our attention to the effect of insulin, specifically what the beta cell releases in response to high glucose level. Beta cell, when there's an high glucose level, beta cell releases proinsulin and amylin inside the secretory vessel. We are going to talk about the mechanism later, but let's have a general idea. Proinsulin consists of both the insulin and the C-peptide. And also note that insulin is going to uptake glucose via the receptors, and C-peptide it specifically assembles and folds insulin so that insulin can function well. Alright, so just to be clear, beta cell secretes both, it secretes proinsulin, amylin, and insulin and C-peptide. And now let's talk about the function of the C-peptide. One of the function, in addition to making sure that the insulin is healthy, is that we can use the C-peptide to predict the amount of insulin, because C-peptide has a higher half-life compared to the insulin. So because of that, the amounts of C-peptide will directly tell us the amount of insulin present. And also note that C-peptide and insulin are attached together. So that's why for every one C-peptide, we have one insulin attached together. So we can predict the specific amount of insulin present by looking at the C-peptide, which has a higher half-life. Now, amylin. The function of amylin is that it delays gastric emptying. So what is the function of amylin? It delays gastric emptying. And there's a problem. When there's no amylin, what do you think will happen? When there's no amylin, there will be a faster gastric emptying. So it means it means even when they eat more, they're going to get hungry really fast because it's digested at a fast rate, and they're going to eat more as a result. And because of that, there's an increased blood glucose, and prolonged increased blood glucose causes diabetes in the long run. So, and there's another interesting fact. Those with diabetes have a decreased amount of amylin. So it makes sense. So those with diabetes, they have decreased amount of amylin because of the faster gastric emptying, which causes high blood glucose level. Before I end, I'm going to talk about the general mechanism by which the beta cells secrete insulin. First, we are going to eat the food, and that is broken down, and it causes an increase in blood glucose level. And the beta cell of the pancreas senses the glucose level by attaching to the glucose using its glucose receptors, and it brings the glucose inside the cell, and the cell undergoes glycolysis, which produces 2 ATP, and then it goes and then it undergoes citric acid cycle, aka Krebs cycle, and finally into electron transfer chain, producing more ATP. Now the ATP is going to cause the synaptic vessel inside the beta cells to exit out via exocytosis. Now inside the synaptic vessel, we have insulin and C-peptide attached together, and we also have proinsulin, which includes insulin and C-peptide, and we also have amylin. Now these are released outside, and this is the general mechanism of how beta cell release insulin. It simply causes more ATP to be formed when the glucose enters inside the cell, and that causes the release of the vesicles.